right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast, as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Nationals series. It's a 4-game series this time, as well as all the other news and rumors that have been going on the past few days in Mets land. Before we do that, we obviously have to go through our house cleaning as per usual. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel for this very podcast on YouTube that is now recorded live every Sunday and Thursday following every single series of games. And for those of you who are watching on playback, which is in the future from when we're recording this, crazy, and you want to join. And if you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, I want to let you guys know that we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. And if you feel like you are being ignored, you're not. They are just being starred throughout the show, so we can just pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features our co-host, who is not here today, Frank's instant reactions after every single Mets game, which is titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of the new episodes that also come out at 9 a.m. the following days, which are Mondays and Fridays. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 30. Jeez. No, we're not that far away. Episode number 63. That's the correct one. Okay, so now, first and foremost, I want to wish everybody a happy July 4th from all of us here at Mets Weekly. And shout out to everyone who is in here, who stops by, that is choosing to spend a little bit of that holiday talking some Mets baseball with us. So it is greatly appreciated. Now, for those of you who are watching visually, there's an empty panel spot on the screen, and that only means that we have a special guest. Now, this guest has been on our show before, and you may know him from his own podcast where he talks about all the news and happenings surrounding that team in Queens, the New York Mets. Please help us welcome back Anthony Rivera from the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony, good to have you here. Now, did I do that right?
You did. What an intro.
I did do it correctly?
Awesome,
okay,
man.
Just making sure. I do my research, all right? I'm just letting you know. I do my research. I know my stuff. All right, so Anthony, good to have you back. How are you feeling about the current situation of the team? You can also let everybody know where to find you, all of that stuff. What's going on?
Yeah, I am personally great. I know that things didn't work out in DC for the Mets today or yesterday, but happy 4th to the both of you. Happy 4th to your audience. And you can follow me at Subway to Shea on X, TikTok, Instagram. You can watch my podcast on YouTube, as well as listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Look, guys, this game that they lost today, I can't really get on them because they have been hitting machines over the last 6-7 days. Been scoring more than 5 runs a game, and this time they just got. And I don't really know. Jose Quintana pitched well, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into all that stuff. But they're only, like you have it in the standings here. They're 1 game under 500, but they are still somewhat in the wild card race here.
Yeah, and listen, I think that obviously I believe it was a little underwhelming, of course. Like, I'm not really satisfied with a split. I believe they should have took 3 out of 4 here. They had a chance to win the first 3, and then it kind of just was discombobulated at the end there. And they gave away these 2 games, in my opinion. But Andrew, what did you see on the field these last 2 games, this entire series? How are you feeling at this current moment? 1 game under 500, 3 games out of the wild card. There's been a little bit more of a space that's been created between the leading team and us. So what do you think in this current position?
I mean, you're seeing some good things continue, and you're seeing, again, some negative things that continue to age this team. But again, you had an ability to win 3 out of 4 today. Again, it's an 11 o'clock start after, a choke job last night. Not, again, getting 1 run to Jesse Winker, of course, has to be the guy of anyone in the National lineup. You want to pitch to him late in the inning, pinch it, home run. But again, you're still seeing you got some length at a couple of your starters and a couple of the start. That was nice to see. But again, the offense continues to be a productive offense for the most part. Again, taking away today. But again, it's the same Achilles heel continues to show its ugly head. And how much longer can this issue continue?
Yeah. I mean, they have really been laboring through it, and they have dodged most of the problems for the most part, but it is still a glaring weakness. I mean, we already know that this bullpen, it's hurting right now, whether it is overworked, whether it is just completely taxed, whether it's just has just a massive like workload of guys who are just not capable of doing these things in high leverage situations, and they're just being pushed to because we don't really have our star closer as of right now. Obviously, he wasn't the same when he was here, but he started to get back into that groove, and then the suspension happened, and they've kind of just been laboring through it as of right now. The offense has been bailing them out, and I think when you look at today's performance and you look at even the game before that, which was yesterday, it's going to come to show that this team is not going to score 8 runs every single time. There's going to be good pitchers that they're going to face, especially in the future, especially tomorrow. They are going to be facing Paul Skeens. There's a possibility where they only get 1 run off of him or 2 runs off of him. They're going to need some of these bullpen arms to help them win in the margins here, because there's going to be close games. It's not just only going to be them scoring the 7 runs per game that they've been able to do in June. So I obviously want to pull up the series rundown. It's a 4-game set, as we know. It started off pretty good. Let's just say that. David Peterson gave you 6 1/3 inning. And excuse me. You had 2 RBIs from Jose Iglesias, who continues to perform in the margins for you. 2-hit game from Bader. A home run from JD Martinez, which was huge later on in the game. 1 for 5 from Alonso. Another RBI from Vientos, who continues to produce. 3 RBI game from Francisco Alvarez as well. The Mets scored 6 runs in the 10th inning to basically put themselves in striking distance, but it was a little bit harder to get out of that one because they put in Tyler J, who did not have a good time, but they were able to settle everything down and get the win for the first game of the series. The second game of the series, we got 7 strong from Sean Manaea. Manaea went distance. Hallelujah. 5 hits, 1 earned run. He had another run that was unearned. 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Solid game from the defense as well overall in the outfield. You had a home run from Lindor, 2 RBIs from Nimmo, one that was very, very crucial that he had later on in the game. An RBI from Vientos, as per usual, continuing to produce. You had a big blow from Alonso as well later on in that game that gave them a little bit more of a comfort lead. Run batted in from Alvarez, run batted in from Iglesias, and then you also had Jose Budo, who was just recently called up again to give you 2 innings of scoreless in relief, and then you had Daniel Nunez finish it off to give you the first 2 games of this series. Christian Scott came back for the second game, 5 2/3 innings. He was pitching well, and then he threw 1 pitch as to where maybe he was possibly pushed a little too long than he should have been, but he did give up a big home run later on in that game, and it became a 1-run game. Lindor homered, Vientos homered. It looked like the Mets were looking to run away with a victory as they were winning 5-0, but Washington scored 7 unanswered runs. Coming back from a 5-0 deficit, Jake Diekman gave up the tying run, and also the lead run. The Mets bullpen kind of faltered a little bit in these tight situations as per usual. You had Ty Adcock come in and make it a little bit worse, and they went down pretty much easily towards the end there, losing 7-5. Then today, the 4th of July, it was not very patriotic of the Mets to play baseball like this. Absolutely no offense whatsoever. But you did get a really good performance from Quintana, as we aforementioned before. 7 scoreless innings, 3 walks, a strikeout. He was able to keep his pitch count low, and he was fantastic from there. But the Mets offense, as we said, not good. 1 hit, 1 walk. That was pretty much it. Base hit from McNeil and a walk from DJ Stewart. The entirety of the Mets offense, which was a less than 2.5 hour game. And then Hauser, of course, surrendering a home run to Jesse Winker in the 8th inning. I guess, am I saying this right? Like the known heel of the Mets franchise, Jesse Winker. Am I saying that correctly? I don't know. Whatever. And then the Mets drop below 500 once again after a 4-game split. Here's the talking point I obviously want to go into right away. The decision for Hauser to pitch to Winker. Now, obviously, he needs the 3-batter minimum rule. You can't just take him out of the game. Obviously, they were expecting to get 2 innings from Hauser. Obviously, with him being the long relief guy now in that bullpen after being in the rotation. I personally would have walked Jesse Winker. As for Jesse Winker in his career, not just complete ownership, but 5 homers against Hauser in his career. He knows him fairly well. And once again, he homers again to make it 6. So I personally would have walked Jesse Winker, especially with, I think it was a right-handed hitter on deck. I'm not sure, but also the fact that this Washington Nationals team is like top 3 in ground ball rate in this entire league. And it would have given you a better chance as to set up the double play ball. That personally, I would have done that. I don't know if you guys agree with me with that. But Anthony, I'll go to you. What do you think about that whole process, this whole series, the main takeaways? What do you got here?
So I was outside cleaning some lawn furniture for the barbecue and did not get to see this home run. I probably should have stayed inside because it was 0-0 the whole time. But let me ask you a question. Was there how many outs were there when Jesse Winker came up to bat?
1 out.
1 out?
1 out. Yeah.
Look, I mean, you could walk him in that spot. I always say stop nibbling the plate. I would have nibbled with this guy and see if he would have chased or anything like that. The guy has completely not only owned Adrian Hauser, but the Mets. I don't know how it's possible.
Yeah.
Like, how is this guy? He's not that good.
Yeah.
Jesse Winker's really not that good, and he continues to crush the Mets every time he gets an opportunity, and they allow him to for some reason. But I don't know. It's a really slippery slope when it comes to this. They just didn't hit. All right, like 1 hit from Jeff McNeil. That's ridiculous. They just got outpitched by Irvin. And, you know, when you have McNeil in the lineup, who's just not hitting, although he did get the 1 hit, and then you also have DJ Stewart in the lineup, who's just really not doing anything and just taking up space right now, that becomes a problem. You got to figure out a way. And even in the 9th inning, like, why is Jeff McNeil coming up to bat again? Why are you not bringing in the hot Jose Iglesias to get an at-bat here? You need a run. Like, is Jeff McNeil magically going to get a hit now that he hasn't done pretty much anything except get singles? So, like, I don't know. This is a tough game. This is not the game that I'm totally concerned about that they screwed up. It was yesterday's game. When you blow a 5-run lead and then you allow Jake Diekman, another guy that should not be on this. Like, I am all set to go with a righty bullpen. Like, I don't care anymore. Just give me
the
all
best
righty.
arms.
Give me the best arms in the bullpen and throw them in there. I'm tired of seeing Jake Diekman. He's a soft tosser. He can't throw strikes. He basically can't do anything. And then you got to have everyone come up and clean up his mess. And then they got to get screwed out like Reed Garrett did on Saturday. Like, you know, enough of Jake Diekman already. Just bring up Eric Orrs or whoever you have ready to come up. The next person, I don't care. Just enough of Jake Diekman already. I don't even care if we don't have a lefty anymore because I've always been the guy I need 2 lefties in the bullpen. We don't have even 1 lefty in the bullpen. That sucks.
Yeah, obviously, like giving a guy a different look, but I mean, again, there's just, it comes to the point where just give me the best pitchers. Give me the guys who can pitch to lefties. Give me the guys who can pitch to righties. If you can't pitch to lefties, you can't pitch to righties, just like with the same thing with hitters. If you can't pitch to lefties, or you can't hit lefties, you can't hit righties, it's just not, like, I find it as useless. If you can't if you can't pitch to both platoons. I just think that, like, yeah, you can bring in guys who can hit lefties or guys who can hit righties, but for some reason it just takes up a roster spot. Like, it just brings in this platoon, which, to be honest, it shouldn't even exist for pitchers because of the 3-batter minimum rule now. So obviously the bullpen, the main story with how it has been recently, of course, with Edwin Diaz going down, it's been shorthanded, it's been taxed with starters not being able to go the distance. Andrew, Jake Diekman is somebody that I think you've pushed for the Mets to get for a while, obviously with them needing left-handed relievers. Are you ready to pull the plug here? Is this like it's time to move on here and manipulate the vesting option or whatever it is?
Hey, Andrew's not the only one. I wanted Diekman here too, so you're not alone on that.
Yeah, there's also another certain nerd-looking dude that also was very high on Jake Diekman in the offseason. But again, we'll go out there. Again, it's been time to move on from this whole bullpen. Adam Ottavino, Jake Diekman. It needs to be cleaned and either replenished with youth of trying to get some guys coming off rehab assignments that potentially could be back probably after the All-Star break. Maybe Montez de Oca's there before, but most likely after the All-Star break. We'll get in, again. You also have Shintaro Fujinami on his way back. Again, this is if I wish Ibby was in the chat. Nate Lavender getting hurt, kind of, and having Tommy John surgery, that would have been the emergency lefty. If a Diekman or when Rayleigh went down, he would have been that emergency lefty call up. You know, him having Tommy John that screws up to having the lefty. But again, like I think the Astros have won World Series with right-handed bullpens. I'm at the point where like, yeah, you know, old school baseball. Oh, you want the lefties? Give me guys who want to throw 100. Enough with these like 92 mile an hour just cookie machines. Add some velocity again. A guy like Fujinami, a guy like Montez de Oca, who at least, yes, they're wild and they have their walk problems, which will drive us insane. But at least they have the stuff that, you know, they can get, you know, if they need a strikeout, they have that ability because one, you know, they throw 102 if need be, and hitters, you know, can't hit that at times. So even with their wildness, they still have the upside of the stuff compared to Jake Diekman, Matt Festa, Adam Ottavino. Like, you need to, again, improve the velocity in this pen. And yes, as we saw, there's his first starting pitcher off the trade market. Relievers aren't going to start moving probably until after All-Star break. So unless you're going to pay a premium, and I'm not even saying that you need to go out and get the high leverage guys that I've been clamoring for. There's a couple. There are guys that you will look at and be like, okay, that dude sucks. But at this point, he's probably better than the assets that we have in-house. You know, if you can get, you know, pay out a cash reliever, and this is going to sound bad, especially how the guys turned out. If there's like a choleric Bickford trade where they can just send cash just to get 2 arms in here, that's how desperate they are just to get arms into this pen that desperately needs, especially now with Diaz, we back in 2 games. So at least you'll have your closer back to maybe calm some of this down, and maybe you don't have to continue to burn out Reed Garrett, who's, you know, come back down to earth after a very good start because he's been murdered because he's been used so goddamn much. You know, Danelle Nunez has been fine. It's been a nice little blessing finding him. But again, it's 3 other spots in that bullpen that you're like, here we go again, 6-run lead. All right, the Mets are going to win 9-8. Like, it's just how it is, especially when you have those guys available and not having, you know, Diaz and Rayleigh and Sean Reed-Foley, who had a good year, him being down. And I know we made it, you know, we talk about David Stearns building depth. You know, again, you're just continuing. You're down to like what, your 12th, 13th reliever on the depth chart, especially adding injuries. Like, now you're going deeper and deeper. And yeah, you know, can you find a Danelle Nunez? Yeah, but you're finding a lot more Matt Festas and those type of guys because that's what's in the AAA. A bunch of guys that are just trying to cling on to major league careers. Those are the guys in AAA that aren't going to get opportunities before younger guys.
You know, was it wise to, like, and I know they had to do it, but getting rid of Jorge Lopez, who was the guy that we had at the beginning of the season that they threw him in extra innings? I can't remember his name.
Oh God,
from Atlanta, that now he's on the Yankees and he's thriving. Tompkin. Like, was it wise? Yeah. Like, they're holding on to DJ Stewart, who has an option and can't be sent down right now. Like, they're holding on to guys that have not produced at all. And now we've lost 2 or 3 relievers that probably could have, you know, added to this team right now. And they are thin. We're on clearance rack relievers right now, unfortunately. And it sucks. The Festas of the world, like, Is it worse to have Josh Walker up here than to have Jake Diekman? I mean, they're pretty much the same. You
Who
just
knows?
got a guy that's younger.
Like, who knows at this point? It's
Joey
such a crapshoot.
and there's again, and Joey Lucchese is a name that, like, again, and he could give you multiple innings. So again, if you're, this time through the rotation, you got some depth out of your starter. But again, another guy that can give you some multi-innings. Is he any good? Not really, but he's better than Jake Diekman. Like, we could say that comfortably.
Yeah, and those are the two. I do want to get into two internal options, obviously, that I've been rehabbing recently. Let me just take a sip of this.
Also, Sean Reed-Foley consistently getting hurt has not helped this bullpen whatsoever. Like,
that
I like Sean Reed-Foley. I know you're a Sean Reed-Foley guy.
Yeah.
But the fact that this guy can't stay healthy for more than 10 days.
The problem with him is that he can't when he can't reach a window of, like, with his windup or something, he's going to hurt himself.
Yeah.
Because he's a very violent thrower. He's a very violent type of pitcher. And that's what has really gotten him hurt a lot. And it seems like they've started to try and tone that down with some adjustments of him kind of just like working a little bit more horizontally than vertically, and not like slinging his arm like basically almost 120 degrees. But I think that he always will be prone to injury. That's always just been his thing. And that's been a problem. And that's the main reason as to why he hasn't been able to gain that consistency. This year, he was doing pretty good. I think he was kind of falling behind the recognition behind Danel Nunez or Danny Young or Reed Garrett. Sean Reed-Foley was having a great season for us. He was actually doing a really good job. He was in more of the low leverage parts at that point where we needed him to kind of shift to low leverage or high leverage situations. He got hurt. So it stinks that was the whole thing that happened again, because he is coming off of Tommy John surgery and just another problem, which has nothing to do with his elbow. He had a shoulder issue. And speaking of these injuries of guys who are rehabbing, I do want to talk about two internal options, because like Andrew just said, there's not really options out there that are really going to be effective to a major league bullpen. Maybe it happens one of every 100 guys that you pick up on waivers, but most likely guys are DFA'd for a reason, especially when you see them getting DFA'd by organizations who have known to develop good pitching. If they're seeing something regress, it's probably going in the direction of they'll probably be out of the league for a while. So as for these two options, which we've already hinted to, and one of them is on the cover of the thumbnail, that being Bryce Montes de Oca and Shintaro Fujinami. Now, these two are rehabbing as of right now, and they are two kind of different diamond in the rough stories, shall we say. Bryce Montes de Oca is rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. He did pitch a little bit in 2022, pitched in spring training in 2023, and sustained the injury as his velocity was going down. He experienced a lot of discomfort, and it turns out that he needed Tommy John surgery. So now he is finally coming back from that injury, and he has been pretty much dominating the way that he usually has. In the minor leagues, he has pitched for Port St. Lucie. I'm pretty sure he was with Binghamton the last outing that he had. And as we all know, for those of you who forget about Bryce Montes de Oca, this man is a monster. The man is a mountain. He is a 6'7", 265-pound giant who throws just complete gas. Obviously, you can see with his sinker that has a ridiculous glove side run that can pretty much top 102, 103. Man is explosive, but the main problem has obviously been the injuries with the recent Tommy John surgery, which was his second in the last 3 years. The man is explosive as all hell. A ridiculous slurvy, sweepy type of slider. Just knows how to tunnel well. Some control issues, but knows how to command the zone. And when he hits those spots, he is just full on dominant. And then there's Shintaro Fujinami, who the Mets picked up on a 1-year deal. Struggled in spring training to grab his footing. He also struggled in AAA. It was not looking good for him, but it seems like he has finally started to settle down into his rehab when he was placed on the 60-day IL with a shoulder strain. The Mets kept him around. I was kind of surprised. I was expecting them to kind of release him at some point because it just was not looking good. But so far in his rehab, Port St. Lucie, I believe he's going to rehab in Syracuse next, along with our top guy, Kodai Senga, I believe at the same pace. But Shintaro Fujinami, we all know he can reach that 102, 103. Hard thrower, lots of empty velocity has happened with him. A lot of command issues have happened with him over the years. Obviously, he has that hard throwing splitter, which is kind of like that little change-up hybrid pitch, shall we say. Lots of good vertical approach angle, as we can say, hovering around that 4 to 5, which is obviously something that we've talked about a lot on this show as something that really makes or breaks careers. And then, of course, the cutter and the sweeper. Lots of good explosive stuff, lots of strikeout stuff that could be something that is really effective if he does apply it. He's had a lot of struggles at the major league level, but it all really continues to be day by day. And we all know that he signed as a starter with Oakland. He was probably the worst pitcher in all of baseball, starting as a starting pitcher, moved to the bullpen, then was traded to Baltimore. He started to pitch a little bit better. And now he's back with us. He signs a 1-year, $3.3 million contract with us. Was expected to be maybe a possible piece to the bullpen. Did not really work out that way, but maybe at the trajectory that they're going, shorthanded in the relief, maybe he is a possibility once again because there is upside there. Bryce Montes de Oca, we know. Basically, it's just a factor of staying healthy for him. And these are two possibilities that could definitely bolster this bullpen of put-away pitches, strikeout stuff, that even though it's not in the strike zone, definitely could generate a lot of whiffs and definitely could bail you out a lot better as compared to a 93-mile-an-hour golf ball that is being thrown by Jake Diekman or a 93-mile-an-hour frisbee that's being thrown by Adam Ottavino, who we all know the story with him. So as for those two, they could definitely give us an advantage. The problem is that on the trajectory that they're going, they might want to slow it down a little bit with them, especially at the pace that they're going. Tommy John surgery with Bryce Montes de Oca. And then, of course, Shintaro Fujinami, who has just struggled all year in the minor leagues. So they might not be here like right away, but they are possible options that maybe you could add to the back end of the bullpen or maybe add to as a featured weapon in middle relief to when Edwin Diaz comes back. The problem is we need those arms now. Now, Bryce Montes de Oca and Shintaro Fujinami, we have talked about these guys before. Andrew, I'll go to you on these guys. Obviously, these guys could obviously help the Major League bullpen, but it's really hard to judge what that workload is going to be for these two.
Yeah, I mean, again, the desperate need of the Major League team should not come over the health of these two guys. Yes, again, they desperately need any sort of help, and I think both of these guys will become contributors. But like I said, I don't think it's anytime soon. I think you're looking at post-All-Star break. And can this bullpen survive with, having these two guys be on the way back? But again, you're going to go through a week and a half of games. You're willing to risk it with this pen. You're already a game under. You're going into Pittsburgh facing two of their three best pitchers in that rotation. Kind of a blessing. Obviously don't want to say him again, but Jared Jones good at all three of them. Jones goes on the IL today, so you do be able to miss one of their firehouses. But again, you're facing Skeen, you're facing Keller. So again, runs should be at a minimum normally, but the Mets have been able to beat up on better pitching, so maybe that trend continues. But again, you can't keep winning these games 9-8. You can try to outslug them as much as you can, and you saw it today. The offense does run dry, but again, just to see having these guys as options that maybe Stearns doesn't have to go out, because let's say if he's banking on one or both of these guys giving you some sort of value, maybe does this change Stearns' deadline plan? Maybe he says, you know what? Instead of adding three, maybe I'm only going to add, one elite high leverage guy, and then maybe he grabs a reclamation project because he sees the velocity and, the upside of both of these guys, which both guys have crazy upside. It's just they both have one, in Montes de Oca's case, can't stay healthy. And again, in Shintaro's case, A problem that the rest of the Met bullpen has is a massive walk problem. So as great as his stuff can be, he still, fits the mold of what the 2024 Met bullpen is. That, he can go walk 3 straight batters, load the bases, and then you're back in a jam where, you're giving up runs. So as much as the desperation that this team needs, any sort of quality arm, they need to take in consideration to say, hey, we need guys now, yes, but these guys can be potential long-term fits. In Montes de Oca's case, is obviously a team control Fujinami on a 1-year deal. That again, with both of the guys having injuries, like it's easy, especially with the velocity they throw. Boom, there's a setback, and then he's gone 3 to 6 months, and then you never see him again. So yes, there definitely needs to be a aggression, maybe push him a little bit, but again, you can't push him so far where again you're pushing a setback and you don't see him for 4 months.
Yeah, and this is another thing that we talk about all the time, and I know this is something that is very public on Anthony Rivera's show, on talking about Jeremy Hefner and a lot of things that go on with him, and talking about the walk problem, and that's obviously not going to add, it's not going to really help it when you bring in these two in Fujinami or Montes de Oca. But obviously they could help you in these high leverage situations with the high leverage stuff that they have. Anthony, do these two options, do they make you feel any much safer adding it to the bullpen? Because they are weapons, but there are still some negatives and positives you kind of have to weigh out with this one.
Yeah, and I think if Fujinami comes up and then goes I think he gets designated for assignment, then he's done, right? He has no options.
I believe so. So they're going to probably have to call him up, if he's activated. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against that, but
yeah, the walks are going to be a problem. It's been a problem with not only the bullpen but the starting pitchers as well, is reason why they're not going deep into games like they should be. Although over the last week we've been seeing 7 innings from Quintana, Sevi, as well as Manaya getting the first time 7 innings. I contribute everything that this pitching staff has done, not to Jeremy Hefner, but to the work that Francisco Alvarez does behind the plate. I mean, have you seen the change in Jose Quintana over the last week or two? That now that Francisco Alvarez is back, this guy has been pitching like the guy we had last year. I mean,
I was ready to shoot Quintana into another stratosphere like that. That was at that point, but there's the difference with Alvarez. It's just the impact he makes. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Look, I'm not the biggest Jeremy Hefner fan. I don't like that he takes too long to come out and kind of calm his pitchers down when they're in these high leverage, stressful situations. And he comes out maybe after the runs have been given up. So with the other guy, with Bryce, and I even talked to you about it. I thought he was a lefty. I didn't realize that he was a righty when he got hurt. When he got Tommy John surgery, I think that he was on his way to be a part of the bullpen. Was it 2022? Yeah. Right? He had a lights out spring training.
2023 going into, ridiculous stuff. Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah.
So, I always thought, what about taking some of these prospects that are starting pitchers and turning them into relievers to start and then build them back up into pieces that could be in the rotation? The Cardinals have done it to success. Other teams have done it to success as well. Why not take some of these guys that are the high touted pitchers, throw them in the bullpen for a year or so and let them build up into becoming starting pitchers again? I mean, what I don't know what else is there for us to do outside of making a trade, which they're not going to do right now because no one's going to be making trades. And the price for some of these relievers are going to be astronomical right now with everyone still in the race. The only thing I can think of is putting McGill in the bullpen. They've already done it with Jose Budo. And that's pretty much it. I mean, what about Andrew mentioned Joey Lucchesi? What happened to Joey Lucchesi? We seen him. Yeah. We saw him once spring. Yeah. And then once during the year, and that's it.
Yeah, we've had conversations about this on our show that possibly that this team, they just don't really like him that much. Possibly this new regime doesn't, they're not a big fan of him, because there has been a lot of guys that have skipped over Lucchesi a lot. Obviously Christian Scott, of course, the high-touted prospect. We've seen a lot of McGill. We've seen a lot of Peterson. We've seen a lot of Budo. So maybe, but when we talk about some of the prospects, there is a prime example of what you're talking about, and that would be Dom Hamill, who has really, really struggled in AAA. Like, I mean, obviously, I talk about the AAA level of how fluctuated that can be, but we're looking at like a 70 ERA pitcher that he has been in AAA. Like, he's been horrendous. And it looks like he's kind of aiming towards possibly moving this guy to the bullpen because the walks have been a problem. Lots of command issues, a lot of home runs he's been giving up as well. So if they can kind of like shorten that workload for a guy like Dominic Hamill, who I think has some of the best stuff in all of the farm system, but he just hasn't really been able to apply it. He hasn't been able to make those good pitches. So maybe the bullpen is the best way to look at it. We already have talked about Dom Hamill as spin rate Jesus, of course, in this farm system of guys like that, where he did show out fairly well in that, was it Futures game or what is it called? Like spring breakout game or whatever, something like that. So he did show some of the good stuff there, but he just hasn't been able to apply it in AAA. Now, I mean, of course, like I said, with that level, but it's come to a point where he just really it's really been a problem. And I think when you're coming at Dominic Hamill, who is 25 years old, he's not young. I think that if you do see some success out of the bullpen in maybe like these 1 or 2 inning spurts, maybe he is maybe an option as a young piece that is in that range of Dinel Nunez, who's 26 years old, or in their mid-20s, who, as we say, like with the joke with a lot of relievers of them calling them failed starters, maybe that kind of goes into that concept of Dominic Hamill, who hasn't been dominant as a starting pitching prospect in the Mets system for the last few years. He's been solid, but in AAA, he really has not been good. He's been one of the worst minor league pitchers, I'd say. And there's a lot of Walmart greeters. There's a lot of car salesmen in AAA. And that's saying something. So, I mean, Dom Hamill, Anthony, would you see like something like that for him? Because we know the stuff is there for him, but it just hasn't been translated to AAA.
Well, you keep talking about like he gives up a lot of walks. Like, we're talking about from top of the major league roster all the way through this minor league roster is the problem of giving up so many walks. How has this not, from a organizational standpoint, been dealt with at all yet? Like, I get the high talent that they're bringing in, the hard stuff that they're throwing, but at some point, these pitchers need some sort of finesse and be able to throw strikes. Like, not everyone should not be like, they should not be walking this many batters. And it's the reason why there are 1 game under 500, 3 games out of a wild card. Like, they could be better than what they are right now. And the walks have killed them.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it from like the situational, just as relievers, it's just a lot of really untimely situations that have really happened. Just, there's been a lot of times where the Mets would go up, a lot of pitchers, they would go up 0-2, they go up 1-2, and they end up walking them somehow because there's just, for some reason, they're trying to get that perfect paint chase. And I mean, they were able to get it done for the first 2 strikes with that stuff. So why not somewhat challenge them? Like,
well, yeah, we saw your really guy, hard. Right? McGill. We saw it with McGill.
McGill has done that too, which is
Peterson.
Which is one of the reasons why it's so frustrating with him, is because he does have that stuff as to where he can attack hitters. And for some reason, there's a lot of nibbling around the strike zone as to where they're trying to find this spot, which, like 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's not going to happen. Like, it's not easy to pitch. We already know that. It's a regular motion. It's hard to hit that perfect window. Not everybody can be as robotic as the 2018 Jacob deGrom, that whole model. Not everybody can do that. So when you're looking at it from just doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting that different result, it becomes insane when these walks are creating so much traffic and coming back to bite them. And I get not wanting to give up the home run ball, because that was a problem last year. It was a huge problem last year, especially from our starting rotation. But at some point, you got to attack them. Like, nothing is going to happen if you're just going to sit there and pitch around the strike zone. These are major league hitters, whether they're bad or not. Yes, there's a lot of chasing in this game. Yes, there's a lot of swing and miss at this game. But at some point, when you're just nibbling around the strike zone, these guys are going to work the count against you, and you're going to end up walking a lot of these batters. And it's obviously a prime example of one thing that happens with Ottavino and Diekman. And now it's completely amplified with how much they do it. And Diekman has always had that problem. So is Ottavino. But at some point, if they don't have good enough stuff, what is their point of being here? You know, they don't have the way that they can bail themselves out with this type of stuff, whether it is velocity, extra movement, extra run on a sinker. They just don't have it. And when it's located in the middle of the plate, it's going to get crushed, which I think that's what they're kind of afraid of. They need these pitchers that don't have any fear. And there's not many here that don't have that fear. That's the problem. And I don't know if that's the mentality that is just brought up by Hefner, or, I mean, we've talked about him like just not having a good feel for the mental game whatsoever, and having more of the hands-on statistical approach as to where he's calling a lot of pitches as to the trial and error, and it doesn't seem to be working with any consistency. You know, I think you're muted. And are you muted? He's muted. Yeah, he's muted.
Sorry,
All
guys.
right.
Look at his, first off, I just want to say we were talking about Lucchesi. 7 innings pitched today, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts in his appearance. And I know Andrew posted about Luke Ritter.
Let me just add in there, because I have to do it. Luke Ritter did homer.
Yeah.
I got it. He did homer. His 18th of the year. We got to do it. Yeah, and I just
he
saw
got
it
more.
from
Wait,
Syracuse.
he almost as many as
exactly.
Alonso.
So,
Damn. God damn.
I bring
Jesus
him up
Christ.
and send down DJ Stewart. I mean, he has an option, so I'd give it
Sure.
a try. But
any utility player is a better option than DJ Stewart, in my opinion. But
yeah,
you know,
what I was
like you
going
were
to say when I
saying with
muted
Joey
myself
Fuego,
was that like, look at the pitcher that Hefner was when he was a Met. I mean, he wasn't that good. He's basically probably putting on the same stuff onto these kids and pitchers, just that average, you know, 5th, 6th kind of starting rotating guy. Like, I don't know. I don't understand the love affair that this organization, and even like the media, like, you know, Andy Martino said, if they get rid of Jeremy Hefner, he's going to get picked up right away. Same thing they said about Luis Rojas, and now he's sitting at third base as the Yankees bench coach or third base coach.
Yeah, I feel like, and that was the same thing that happened with, I'm pretty sure Martino had another thing about Tomas Nido. They said, oh, somebody's going to grab him up on waivers, and they're going to pay that whole contract because he's such a value. He goes through waivers, he gets released, and then he signs a minor league deal with the Cubs, and he's their backup catcher right now. So it's like, I feel like the Mets, there is kind of a viewpoint from the Mets organization, especially whether you're looking at Hefner or some of these pitchers, that it seems like the Mets have a better interest of keeping guys around. Compared to other teams, they have no interest in them. I think that, like, there is guys who have a lot more value to the Mets as compared to all these other guys. Because when you see the Mets option a pitcher that, like, maybe, or not option, when you see them DFA somebody, so let's say like they DFA Adam Ottavino, right? Who they apparently love so much. They DFA him. No one's going to pick him up. No one is actually going to voluntarily say, yeah, I'll take Adam Ottavino. It always seems like no other teams are taking the guys that we're taking off, putting on the market. So it seems like a lot of these teams kind of view a lot of these pieces as like just dead weight. And a lot of Mets fans see some of these guys as dead weight when they don't perform. Andrew, anything you want to add on, the bullpen? Because we can go on and on about this because this has been one of the main culprits.
I mean, yeah, it just, again, the idea that everybody's just wanting to add, the bullpen market. Everyone's like, well, the Mets, every team's going to be looking for bullpen. Every contending team. And the Mets aren't, I'm not saying they're not a contender. But again, you've got every single elite team is going to be looking for an arm. And the fans being like, oh, just go make a trade. Like, yes, do I think there is a surplus? The Mets have built a surplus of prospects where I would take a few to go out and get, a couple of high leverage arms? Yes. But, if you're looking at now, you're probably taking that whole pile of surplus compared to maybe you wait 2 weeks, maybe you wait, a couple days before the deadline. Well, maybe it only costs one of those, 3 or 4 prospects you could put aside and say, okay, that's my deadline package. I can use those guys. Now you're probably taking all 4 of them, and I look like guys like Alex Ramirez, Marco, kind of like, again, the lower mid-tier guys. So, okay, those are a couple guys you can flip away. Right now, if you're looking at any reliever, you're looking at all of them. You're not going to be like, especially let's use Tampa Bay, who they already make a move. Pete Fairbanks is one of the favorite arms that I'd like to see them have interest in. To get Fairbanks, they're going to want Aram, Vargas, and maybe one of Dom, Hamill, or Vassell. Like that right now. Is that going to be the same case on July 31st? Probably not. Maybe that only cost you, just Aram, let's say. The prices are going to be higher, and then you're also bidding against the other contenders who, yes, they don't have the prospect capital that we've been able to build it up compared to a team like the Yankees and Dodgers who continuously just burn prospects. Yes, but again, you're still going to get in the bidding war. So fans being like, "Oh, do something now," unless you're trying to, get Javi Baez, which I know, yes, Peter Armstrong sucks. Just the principle of, hey, you want to give up a couple of let's call it Kevin Parada for a rental reliever. Yes, do we believe in Kevin Parada? No. But again, you're giving up that bigger name now compared to if you wait those couple weeks. So, would I like him to be a little more aggressive on guys who maybe being DFA just to try to find a lightning in a bottle that you can maybe get 2 or 3 quality appearances for to get to that trade deadline? I would like him maybe to be a little aggressive in that scenario. But again, you have some guys, like we said, coming off injuries. You're getting Edwin Diaz back that hopefully can set everyone calm down and go back into their role. So, again, I'm not expecting anything, transaction-wise, and I think the fans should, calm down. Again, I love, being aggressive and wanting to be aggressive, but, again, it's not going to happen unless you want to pay, premium prices for a premium reliever.
I think you're getting junk for junk right now at this point. And let me be honest with you guys. I don't follow the minor leagues as much as a Joe DeMayo and you. I rely upon you guys. You guys are in tune with all the minor league players and stuff. But let me ask you this: what prospect have the Mets traded where it's been they have become this star or superstar? Because I have not seen it. Yeah. The only trade I can think of where there's been a player that's become competent and we got screwed in a trade was Billy Taylor for Jason Isringhausen, who went on to become the closer of the St. Louis Cardinals. Is there any other big trade that the Mets P. Cor Armstrong? Nothing, right? No. Jared Kelenic? Nothing. Who else? We've held on to guys. Lastings Millage we held on to. Who else? Fernando Martinez. I have no love for prospects. If you're gonna trade them, trade them. I mean, they're chips, they're lottery tickets. That's how they are. So if they don't pan out, they don't pan out. And to be honest, if a guy is drafted by the Mets, maybe they'll never become to that max capacity because that's just kind of how they are. But I mean, this is a good question from MAZ in the chat. He's asking, would you trade one of our starters for a good bullpen arm? And I think that this is kind of a concept as to where the Mets kind of need help in one area. But if you were to trade one of our starters, I feel like it would probably bleed out from the starting rotation, even though they do have depth options, they have quantity. I'm not trying to say they have quality like John Heyman tried to say. I don't know what it is, a few weeks ago. I'd say they have the quantity of major league caliber pitchers. But I think this early right now, I wouldn't trade somebody that can give you multiple innings for somebody that can give you maybe 1 or 2 innings. That's just kind of just simple, simple transactional. But I think there is some out of the box thoughts that you may have to go into to fill some of these possibilities, because
like we've talked about, like maybe them buying and selling, but it's weird because when you're trading trash for trash as of right now, what's available, I think a lot of Mets fans are just kind of looking for that Trevor Gott trade right now. And I feel like we're kind of forgetting how, like, unfortunate that became. Like, he didn't really do anything. Like, he really wasn't that good. It was it was a decent arm to have in the bullpen, but Trevor Gott is not like the caliber of reliever that you want right now. That's not really what they're missing. They need somebody to throw strikes, make pitches, and doesn't walk the ballpark. So right now, I just don't see that as a possibility. And it's just a little too early as of right now. Like, yeah, we're a few weeks away from the deadline, but I don't know. I think if you make a trade for a reliever, you're not going to be satisfied with either what you give up or what you get in return. It's just not going to be as great as you think it is. I think that there's an expectation out there that doesn't really exist in the real world of how they can really just fix it. Because I feel like a lot of people are playing Diamond Dynasty here, and they shouldn't be. And a lot of people just talk about that of like, I can trade this guy in my fantasy league and get this guy and be proactive like the GM that I can be. But I just don't see that as a possibility right now, especially with relievers as to where, it's so finicky and you just don't know what you're going to get as that output. And I'm really, I wouldn't see trading starting pitching that always becomes very valuable on the trade market as early as they are. Maybe I'd trade them for some young pieces, like young prospects, but not for relievers. I've never been really one to give up any notable assets, even Kevin Parada, for a reliever. We had this discussion, what was it, last year, of like a possibility of Kevin Parada for Alexis Diaz. Like, come on. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's way too much. Obviously, Kevin Parada has dropped recently. Diaz still has the years of control, but trading for a reliever, as much as I love Edwin Diaz, it's not a smart thing to do. It just isn't, and it really just doesn't help you sustain any success whatsoever because of how relievers are. You know?
The Mets are going to have to figure this out and piece this puzzle together within house. And I'm pretty sure they have many levels of, okay, we're getting Edwin Diaz back. Let's see how far we are when he comes back. And then when Kodai Senga comes back, we'll see what happens with, like, they're going to see where they're at before they, make any rash trades or whatever. And maybe, when Kodai Senga comes back, maybe they make a 6-man rotation. Maybe the extra day off gives these starters the opportunity to go longer into games. And then you take Tyler McGill and you throw him into the bullpen. And he could be another multi-inning reliever. And then you have him, Hauser, and Daniel Nunez, as well as Jose Buto. And these guys can pitch multiple innings. That's the only thing I can think of as of right now, because they're not going to get rid of Jake Diekman. I mean, they would have done it already. I feel like Adam Ottavino's had a huge leash even from last year. So like, they're just not going to get rid of these guys, unfortunately. Like, Diekman and Ottavino are last year's Dominic Leone and Trevor Gott. They were not getting rid of them. Eventually, we traded him at the deadline. But like, how long did we have Dominic Leone mess up games for us for?
Leash was way too long. Yeah. Way too long. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Mets bullpen right now, they're obviously waiting for Edwin Diaz to come back. We already know that the closer will always shorten up the game. Edwin Diaz looked to, grab his footing a little bit before he got suspended. So, I mean, as of right now, let's just say this has been a long 10-game stretch, like a 10-game window. It's been long. Like, it's been quite a quite a journey so far, and it's not even over yet. I think we have 2 more games left of this, or 3 more games left of this. So, it's not going to stop here. So when obviously the Mets have had their offense to bail them out in a lot of these situations, But with the bullpen, you need a lot of these high leverage situation guys who can come through for you, especially when you're talking about a lot of relievers for the postseason. Mm-hmm. That is going to be a main factor because you need a good bullpen in order to compete in the postseason, whether you have the hitting or not. You need those guys who can lock down these one-run games, these tie games. Right now, you only feel good with a 10-run lead as of right now. Like, if you're up 10-2, there's a possibility you win 10-7. Like, right now, it just seems like at the end, with this bullpen, wing and a prayer, let's just try to have more runs than the other team. That's literally how it feels without Edwin Diaz, with a lot of these guys taxed, with a lot of these guys being overworked, with the rotation not being able to give you distance. You got a little bit better of it in DC here. You did get some length for your rotation. 6 innings from Peterson, 7 from Minaya, 7 from Quintana. So it's a little bit more rested going into Pittsburgh for those last 2 games without Diaz. But I'm really, at some point, they're going to have to address this. They're going to have to make some moves, whether it is savvy, whether it is frontline. This is another option. Obviously, Tanner Scott's going to be out there. I don't think he's going to be traded right now. And I don't know if the Marlins would be willing to trade with us.
Yeah.
And Scott is going to have a big ask.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm going to ask Tanner Scott, because Tanner Scott is going to be a big commodity on the trade market because the Marlins just being so bad of a team. Andrew, what would you let's say Tanner Scott gets traded to the Mets tomorrow, right? What would be the package that they would be willing to give him up to the Mets? What would you think it would be? A month before the deadline.
A month, so we're saying today. So in about 20 minutes, he gets traded to pass a notification. Knowing, I guess, Peter Bendix being, the former going from the Rays, you would think they would want young, athletic. You're probably starting maybe Alex Ramirez, maybe even closer to Colin Houck, again, for today. But you also have the problem, he's a rental. So maybe, again, let's say Aram is like the base. He's only getting him for 2 months and whatever's left in the, probably 3 months. We just got into July. So you're already starting with Aram. Moving, probably they look at one, maybe a Ronald Hernandez or maybe again Dom Hamill, Calvin Ziegler, into that pitching depth. So, and okay, maybe I'm the only one here because yes, Tanner Scott is having an amazing year this year. I want nothing to do with Tanner Scott because he's a guy, again, lefty. He throws. He's having a great year.
I get what you mean.
Has closed, can close games. This motherfucker walks the ballpark too, and I do not want another one. If I'm adding a premium high leverage on, Tanner Scott is not the guy I'm going after and getting. If I'm getting him for cheap, which is not going to happen, again, you're looking at the big teams are going to be interested. The Dodgers, the Yankees, we'll have some interest. The Phillies maybe in the conversation. The price of again, you have to play in division tags. Plus, again, him only being a rental. In my opinion, if you're trading a high leverage arm, and that's why this is for my board. I am not touching a rental. There's only one rental I'm touching, and that's maybe Yimi Garcia, because maybe you can get him cheap in Toronto, but I am not touching any of these rental relievers. If I'm trading a premium asset, I'm going for term. That's why I'm continuing to bang the Tampa Bay guys. There's a few guys in the, Michael Kopech's kind of in the same level of Tanner Scott, where, he's got good stuff. He's walking the ballpark. There's a couple of Giants relievers. The Giants continue to fall back. And especially there's a couple relievers with bigger contracts. Maybe you can give up less because they have a bigger maybe mutual option or player option going in the next year. That brings the price down. And again, the Nationals, we're not even going to talk about those guys because, Mike Rizzo would rather kill himself than make a deal with the Mets. So there's still plenty of guys out there. And Tanner Scott, again, it's the sexy lefty because, again, we need lefties. I can name you 3 lefties right now I'd prefer over Tanner Scott. What's it called? Garrett Clevenger from Tampa Bay, again. Solid 3 years team control. I'd rather, again, do I love Andrew Chafin? No, but it's a rental, but it's not going to cost me anything. It'd be Detroit. Yeah. Here, have him. Again.
Maybe a vaccine it might cost you. I don't know.
Yes. My personal kind of low-key favorite, and the only rental, again, another one of the rentals I'd like, I'm calling San Francisco about Taylor Rogers. He's got a big option for next year, making his price cheaper. So if I'm looking For relievers and premium high leverage guys, do not talk to me about rentals. I'm not giving up premium assets.
I will put one
rentals.
name out there, and then we'll obviously move on from the bullpen talk, because like we've said, we are an hour into this. We can talk about this forever. We really can, because it's been the main bugaboo of this team as to why they're probably not as good as they should be, especially with this offense. And this is mentioned Mason Miller. Mason Miller is going to be a big commodity as well. They're going to ask for a lot for him. It is the A's, because they'll pretty much take any scraps for anything because they don't really care. And with the A's, I also do want to point out another name that I'll put out here. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I was talking about this yesterday or like the day before, but Lucas Urkeg is another one that you possibly put out there. Great setup man for the A's, who has also had a phenomenal season. He's controlled the walk problem this year, and he's been good in these high leverage situations. He's also a former draft pick of David Stearns when he was in Milwaukee. So that is somebody that you could look out for. Maybe there is some of these Stearns disciples you can look at. But we've seen he's a 1-inning reliever, so he's not going to give you any length. He's a 1-inning reliever. He has pitched 31 games and pitched 31 innings. He hasn't been pulled from a game yet, so that's good. But I mean, when you look at from a standpoint of how they're going to form up this bullpen, I don't think they're going to go to any of these high leverage arms at all. I think they're going to try and fill in the gaps of the bullpen. They're going to try to fill in some middle relief. I feel like they want a lot of these guys like Hauser or not Hauser, actually, Budo, of course, and McGill to be like kind of seen as starters maybe on the trade market. As for McGill, I don't think they're going to trade Budo. Budo, I think, is going to stay. He's got tons of years of control. Guy like Lucas Urkeg, this guy has control through 2030. He's projected to be a free agent in 2030. He's not arbitration eligible for another 2 years. So that is a piece that you possibly can look at of someone who can also throw you some gas as well, but doesn't walk the ballpark, is in big high 90s. I'm pretty sure he can touch 100. So that's a strikeout type of guy you can put out there, like those 10, 11 strikeout per 9 type of relievers. And, of course, and this is another thing that you can talk about with Mason Miller or Lucas Urkeg or whatever you're talking about. Pitching in high leverage in Oakland is way different than pitching in high leverage in a market like New York City. And that's a really good point. That is a really good point. That's something you can also look at, and not to mention the mental game that we talk about with Jeremy Hefner all the time. Doesn't seem to have much of a feel for it. I mean, that's from my observation. Maybe there's a different story from inside the clubhouse, because I'm not inside the clubhouse. But, I mean, it's also something you also can think about. Coming into a new team in a big market with high expectations, a huge stage like that, that's another thing that where you kind of can look at it from... Maybe we go internally here. Maybe we don't move some of these pieces for some of these guys that buckle under pressure. Like one example, Michael Givens, who came here. When he started off here, it was a disaster. I mean, it was a disaster. The guy was just like the only guy that they brought in here. Obviously, brought in by Epler. Different story, different situation. But, some of these relievers that come in here who are not like the main guys. I mean, sometimes they melt down in New York. It happens. Yeah. Sometimes they're great, like Addison Reed. Sometimes they're not, like Michael Givens. So it happens. And that's also another thing you got to think about. I mean, that's also one piece that, like, of information that doesn't get thought about in terms of managing the assets on the roster.
And that's why a guy that should always be on the list is David Robertson, who's pitched in New York, and he's always being traded.
Could that happen again? Maybe.
I'd do it.
Maybe.
I'd do it.
Maybe.
The guy
Why
already
not?
proved that he could pitch here. And you talk about Tanner Scott. I just want to bring up his stats because Andrew mentioned his walks. Last year, 78 innings pitched, 24 walks. This year, 37 innings pitched, already 23 walks. So
he's throwing a lot harder too, I think. That's probably why, I believe.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. Again,
give me David Robertson. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, David Robertson also has had an occasional walk problem, but he's able to get out of these situations a lot because he just knows how to make pitches. Like, he knows how to make pitches, and that's what makes him such a great veteran piece. And he's on a 1-year deal with the Rangers. The Rangers, they're in flux right now. They have not been good, even though they won the World Series last year. Same thing goes with the Diamondbacks as well, which is kind of crazy how baseball works in that matter of sustainability. Maybe that is somebody that you consider. I mean, maybe it's a consolation prize for them stealing our lovely Jacob deGrom. I don't know. Maybe that's what they have to do because, when I look at the Mets bullpen, it's really hard because you want some of these young arms, these young explosive arms like the Daniel Nunez and the Danny Young who have a lot of upside. But then you also have some guys that have done it before, and you'd like to have them in there. But they're not Adam Ottavino or Jake Diekman, who pretty much they've fallen off a cliff in their late 30s. I think they need to find that median, and I trust David Stearns to do so. And I think that the criticism that he is kind of getting right now, I mean, I listen, I understand it with how shorthanded they are, and they're kind of like, it kind of looks like they're doing nothing. But in the situation they're in, there's not really much available. There just isn't. No. It's the reality of what you're going to get is Tyler J. You're going to get Matt Festa. You're going to get like these types of arms that they're just going to probably make matters worse. And they're AAA arms. That's where they belong. Is Aaron Loop anywhere? Is he still with LA? Is he with?
He's still pitching.
I don't know.
Does Aaron Loop still pitch?
I mean, Hefner was there when Aaron Loop was doing well. I don't know. I think he's available. He's a free agent. Horrendous
There's
year
a reason
with
for
the
that.
Angels last year. But like I mean, I wouldn't sign somebody cold off the street here, because he is 36 years old. He's not young.
He had a 6.10 ERA last year.
Wow. Jeez.
For Anaheim. I mean, looking at it, people were upset that we didn't sign him.
Wow.
384 from his .95 ERA with us, went to 384, 610.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't going to repeat what he did. No. Like, he wasn't going to repeat what he did, but he got paid. Obviously, the Angels are not the model organization for pitching. They are horrendous, and I actually despise them for how many careers they have wasted. But I don't know. I think signing a guy off the street, it's kind of hard to measure that up. I don't know where Aaron Loop is pitching as of right now. Is he in the KBO? I don't know. But
where's Joely Rodriguez?
I don't think that's the best way to. Joely Rodriguez, is he available? Like, that's what I mean. Like, a lot of these guys are like the Mets rejects. Doesn't seem like anybody's anxious to pick them up. I think he's with Boston right now, and he was like outrighted at AAA. Like, I think they DFA'd him or something.
Yeah, 6.55 ERA. Oh,
yeah, boy. I mean, like, this is what you're looking at right now. What is available? Like, what's available? What is on waivers? It's not like, it's just not really that good. It really just isn't. It's not anything like worth noticing as to where this is going to make an impact to a hurting bullpen. It's just going to add to it, if anything. And then you get that one guy out of 100 that does well for you, like maybe a few good weeks of like that Adonis Medina type reliever.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen. Like, it's just not something that happens well. So they're probably going to have to wait till the deadline and fix this internally. But right now, they're just going to probably have to just roll with it. And I think that's kind of how you look at it. It's unfortunate. It is. But that's kind of the position they are in, about a few weeks away from the deadline. Now, talking about tough situations, I want to talk about some positives. And that obviously has been this sort of rise of clutch hitting, this high leverage hitting that the Mets have really done fairly well with. Obviously, these last two games are not a good example of that. But with the clutch hitting of situational hitting, we've known that this has been a very big, not just like problem, but it's more of just an inconsistency for the last few years of the Mets cashing in with runners in scoring position, buckling down and doing the right thing and, finding their pitch, putting the ball in play to get those runs in these tight games. And they've been able to do that fairly well. And I do want to look at it from how they've looked from the league. And they haven't been the best at it, of course, because they had a little bit of an ice cold start. But in the league, if you look at the Mets coming up clutch, as you can say, from high leverage situations, which doesn't even include like just runners on base, but just in general of high leverage situations, they're pretty much top 10 in every single category besides batting average or on base percentage. And when you look at it from high leverage situations, the only thing that really matters is the results. When you get that result, you need to drive it in, and they're able to do these things against whether it's high leverage pitchers or in these late and close situations. Of course, the guy being highlighted that's in the middle there, Harrison Bader, has been one of the main catalysts for this situation where he's come up fairly big for us. Obviously not slugging as much, but he's been able to get the big hit when it's mattered. Obviously, Starling Marte, who has always been one of the best high leverage hitters in all of baseball for a long time throughout his entire career, who has been one of the main reasons as to why. They're two guys that you can obviously point out who have not really come through in these high leverage situations. One has done it fairly well recently, but one that we can obviously talk about, that being Pete Alonso, who has not been himself. He definitely hasn't, especially with runners on base. Whatever situation you're talking about, he's been more of a low leverage bat this year, and the fact that they've been able to work around that without him getting the big hit is pretty impressive. Of course, Vientos has been a great high leverage hitter this year. JD Martinez has always been a great high leverage hitter, always knows the situation, even though he did take that third strike last night, which was very, very puzzling and frustrated me. Francisco Alvarez has been somebody who's come up big fairly for them. And then, I mean, you look at just from the runs being batted in, these timely extra base hits, whether you're talking about weighted runs created plus, the slash line, there's been a lot of production from a lot of different players on this roster. And it is kind of weird as to where Alonso hasn't been in the middle of it, which is weird. But collective as a unit, they've been able to drive a lot of these runs in, and it's produced a lot of offense, a lot of timely offense. Anthony, what do you think about how this offense has looked, especially in these situations? The approach, it's looked a lot better recently, especially in June.
Yeah, the approach, the way they've been hitting, all can be tracked back to their hitting coach, which is JD Martinez. Right. I mean,
yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, JD Martinez has been working with this whole entire team. The way they've been hitting, man, I am very impressed over the last couple of weeks, how they've been able to, come up with some clutch hits here, especially with Pete Alonso being so mediocre. I mean, like, could you imagine Pete Alonso being Pete Alonso from either last year or the year before, or even 2021, 19, like it'd be a whole, like they'd be scoring like 10 runs a night. But he has really, and forget about Jeff McNeil, who's been like an automatic outside of today.
Of course.
Excuse me. But throughout them scoring all these runs, it's been very quiet that Pete Alonso has really not been a part of this offense, doing pretty much anything outside of that home run he hit in extra innings. And they were already up by 4 or 5 runs at that point. So like, if he can get himself going and be the Pete Alonso we know he can be, because at some point he's going to have to carry the offense. JD Martinez has already done it. Brandon Nimmo has done it. Francisco Lindor has done it from the top of the order. And you can even account to Francisco Alvarez and Mark Vientos getting clutch hits. Pete Alonso has just been playing out the season, it just feels like. And I hope he can get it to himself together. I don't think he's going to get traded at the trade deadline. But I also don't know if he's going to get a contract. He's definitely not getting with the money he wants from the Mets. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's kind of looking, you're kind of looking at it with a smirk on your face, because we did have that news about, what was it, 7 years, $158 million offer that he rejected. Obviously, Scott Boras, we already know he was going to reject it. We're going to go to free agency, but you're looking at it now. I mean, from the perspective of Conforto, who also turned down, what was it, 5 years, $100 million. I mean, right now, Pete is not having the abysmal contract year that Conforto had, but because right now he's been still a plus bat. He's still been fairly good. He's still the 800 OPS hitter, but he just hasn't been the main catalyst, which we have seen. So, Andrew, I'll go to you on this, because with Pete Alonso, we can obviously talk about him as one of the main stories. We've talked about this for a long time as to getting power protection for Pete Alonso. And it seems like with him finally getting this protection, he seems to just hit worse. I don't know if it's just basically going against the narrative of power protection as to where the Mets just go against all philosophies in all of baseball as to where you need a deep lineup to actually be a good team. It seems like Pete Alonso just likes a top-heavy lineup in order to actually perform. Now, with power protection, we have talked about Pete Alonso getting more pitches in the strike zone to attack. And with a guy like JD Martinez, with a guy like Mark Vientos, who has just come up blossoming as an offensive weapon for this team, Francisco Alvarez, we know, is a big power threat. We know that Pete Alonso's been getting a lot more pitches into the strike zone. He definitely has been. But from the approach we're seeing from him, we're seeing a lot of swing and miss. We're seeing a lot of staring at strikes down the middle. We're seeing a lot of chasing other pitches in the batter's box. We're just not seeing an efficient approach from Pete Alonso that we know we can see. We have seen that proven for the last 5 years that he can do damage in pitches in the zone. He just has not really been doing that. So, Andrew, from Pete Alonso, from high leverage standpoints, from these situations as to where we need him to come through, at some point he's going to have to carry this offense. How are you feeling about the situation with Pete Alonso? Is there weight on his shoulders that he's kind of trying to shake off? To me, he's kind of looked like he's on autopilot for most of the season. He looks like he's on autopilot.
Yeah, and again, we always say he has to be the catalyst. Now with the youth and Lindor and Nemo and now JD, he doesn't have to be the guy. He can be a guy in a congruent, good, deep lineup. But like you said, he hasn't been, especially you would have thought, big contract year. He would have trying to get paid. You would have thought, all right, we said no to the contract. And he's just come up and he's just been a solid player in high leverage. He's never been, the narrative around Alonso is he never shows up. He hits his homers. Like I even made the joke in the game 2 of this series. I'm at work. I'm listening to the game. They score those runs in extra innings. Alonso's up with, the guy on. And I'm like, all right, Pete, here's your time to hit the homer because there's already 3 runs already scored. Here's your tack on, late inning homer. And sure as shit, he hits the homer. But again, do I think he's the clutchest hitter? No. But again, we've seen it in the past in 2021 when he has to be the guy, he can do it. But is this, again, like you said, maybe it's in his head. Well, it's not in it. Well, maybe the contract obviously is in his head. But the fact that he is not needed to be the guy anymore. Does he where he can take the adjustment? He's not making the adjustment. Says, hey, I got Alvarez hitting behind me, who's been productive and high leverage and is just a great hitter. Mark Vientos, is it the pressure's off him being like, I have to come through, or be like, well, I got, Alvarez can pick me up, or, Vientos, or hell, Jose Iglesias at times can pick me up. Is that maybe getting in his head where he's been going from the guy that he can't just be a guy? Again, there's a million things. He's dumber than a box of rocks. We know this. God knows what's in his head. No one needs to know what's in his head. But again, he's still providing power. I was trying to find something. As you've seen, I got Savant pulled up. All of his numbers is continuously to regress. Yes, the batting average has gone up this year from past, but the OPS continues to regress. The power numbers are always going to be there because that's what Pete Alonso is. He could be a Kyle Schwarber, but maybe not walking as great as it, but at the end of the year, he's going to have 35 plus homers. That's what he is. Again, is it the adjustment factor that he just can't, that he's not used to and just can't get over the fact that, okay, I don't have to be Superman. I can be Robin. And again, the offense has been better with that. We've seen, the youth. Again, there's a million things. And again, with Pete Alonso, there's 1,000 things in his head. But again, as long as he's providing the power, that's what you supposedly pay him to do. Again, he's the bopper. The RBIs are, going to come in special situations. And again, he doesn't have to be the guy because there are more cooks in the kitchen compared to he was the only cook in the kitchen with a bunch of bums that have been in that lineup where he was told he has to be that guy. He just can't be a guy anymore. Again, there's a million things. As long as he's still hitting homers, yes. And high leverage, again, not amazing. He's league average or slightly above, which obviously you want that. Again, the only batting average I give a shit about is run at risk. What are you doing in risk? And obviously the
Yeah.
WRC plus 103 or whatever it was. So a league
Yeah.
average bat and high leverage.
A lot of
Like
walks and high leverage. They obviously pitch around him in those high leverage situations.
leverage
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And again, it's just with Alonso, we know who the bopper we know. Obviously, again, there's a million things, but definitely again, the power's there. That's all I really care about. Again, with this lineup of the improvement of Alvarez and Vientos makes it a lot more cushion the fact of the regression Alonso has had in it. But again, you're seeing a better offense. So I think, yes, we can nitpick Alonso. If the offense is still good, and it has been, if we're nitpicking a good thing, again, like at this point, I'd prefer a deeper, more coherent lineup than Alonso, Alvarez, and then, Jeff McNeil. Like, I like that now that there's some depth and there's production and high leverage, and there's other options where, again, there's less off his plate. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And again, would you like better numbers? Of course. But I think, again, in this situation, he's still being productive. He's still hitting for power. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah. I just want to put some numbers to the claim, obviously. As we've talked about before, Pete Alonso going into this year, getting the third least amount of pitches in the strike zone out of the entire league behind Ohtani and I don't know, was it Olsen? Something like that. But when you look at it this year for his career, 47.3% of pitches in the strike zone, which was the third least. This year, it's up 4%, 51.2%. So he's getting those opportunities. And there's been a lot of swing and miss, a lot of looking at it. Sorry for interrupting you,
No.
Anthony. I just want to put the numbers out there.
His biggest problem we've seen in his career is swinging and missing at pitches outside of the plate, like these sliders that are in our dugout. He swings at, but this year he's swinging at a lot of pitches right down the middle. He's just missing them. And like Andrew said, we know who he is. We know what Pete Alonso is, but Pete Alonso doesn't know who Pete Alonso is because he's got a little birdie in his ear named Scott Boras telling him that he can get money like Aaron Judge gets. And he is not the player that Aaron Judge is. That's the problem. If he's going to be hitting 30 home runs with 90 RBIs before the All-Star break, okay, we're talking about a different player. But he's not that guy. Yes, he hit the most home runs for a rookie. Yes, he's hit more home runs since 2019. But Aaron Judge is just a unique type of superstar that's out there right now. And Pete Alonso is just not that. Judge is that all-around package. He could talk to the media. He plays good in the field. He hits for batting average. He hits OPS. He clobbers home runs. And Pete Alonso's probably just a home run hitter right now. I mean, his defense is okay, but even that has regressed as we see that he has a hard time throwing to throw a double play or anything like that. I mean, even trying to throw to the pitcher at first base, he's having trouble with. I think Scott Boras has just totally messed this guy up, and we know he's a goofy dude. He's a goofy dude, and now that he's been infected by the Scott Boras crap that he spews, there's a possibility that his contract goes all the way out to how JD Martinez signed, or it could go all the way to spring training.
Yeah, it's possible that does happen, and I think that it's a thought in Pete Alonso's mind with whether he has a lot of thoughts or not. But with Pete, I think what goes on as we get closer and closer to him possibly not being a Met next year. Is it possible that he's not here next year? As we get closer and closer to that decision being made, of that future being made, I'm getting to the point, you get to the point where, yes, he hasn't had to be the guy as to where Andrew is saying, but I just need to see it. I need to see that production again if he wants to get paid and he wants to be here long term. You're kind of just running out of excuses here. You really are running out of excuses, and we know what Pete Alonso is capable of, and that's the problem with being hard on him or not making excuses for him or wanting to keep him long term. We know what he's capable of. We know that he could give you 40 to 50 home runs. he could drive in 100 plus RBIs. We've seen him do that before. So the problem is that, and it's kind of conducted a lot. Like I hear it a lot on the SNY broadcast sometimes. I've heard it multiple times a lot. Since he's come into the league, no one's hit more home runs than Pete Alonso since 2019. And we know that. We've seen him do it. But let me see it now. I need to see it now. Because this is your contract year. It's time for you to prove that you are worth that money, or worth a long-term deal, or worth being here long-term. Because we know that Pete wants to be here long-term. Absolutely. Loves being a Met. Maybe a little too much. But when you look at it from whether it's statistical or what he's providing for this team, he needs to be one of the catalysts for the offense, or he's not going to get what Scott Boras or he's asking for. And I like Pete. I want Pete to be that guy. I absolutely do, because I know what he's capable of. But if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. I need to see that production that you had from maybe 2022, something like that. Like, we're not seeing, I wouldn't say he's regressed as a hitter, because I think that eventually he's going to figure it out as the hitting profile that he has, of the natural ability that he has. But you need to see it. I need to see it. When you have runners in scoring position, when you're down by a run, the game is tied, I need him to drive in those runs. Like, I need to see him contribute to the offense. There's no real excuses anymore as to where, oh, well, this is a tough pitcher. You're supposed to be the guy. You need to contribute to this line. You need to contribute to this offense. You need to be the top guy, whether you have these young guys or not. It's hard to rely on some of these young guys because sometimes they slump. This is an established power hitter. I need to see the results, or the result is going to be you're playing for another team next year. Because unless he comes back or not, I mean, it's really hard to keep making these excuses. It really is.
Yeah, it's just like you mentioned, like with the whole Conforto thing. I mean, obviously Pete Alonso's having a better season than Conforto did. Like, Conforto had an absolutely awful season with not taking that contract that they offered him. But like, if you really want to be here, if you want to be a New York Met, then you should have taken the contract that was offered. I get trying to get the most money, but if you want to be here, you need to take the contract that they're offering you, because let's say you do go and get the $300 million. Is that team that pays you that going to be able to afford other players and now try to make a run at a postseason? Like, do you want to win a World Series? Or are you just padding your numbers? Like, what are you trying to do here, Pete? That's the thing for me. Like, Scott Boras has already proven this offseason that like the shine is off his, being the great guru agent. It's over with. Teams know how to play him now. They didn't know how to do it in the past. They know how to do it now.
Yeah, I think that the desperate measure comes down, especially when you have a lot of young talent coming through the minor leagues and you have these veteran guys who are trying to get paid that are represented by Scott Boras. There's a lot of young talent out there that you can develop yourself. And I think that a lot of other teams are doing that fairly well, a lot better as compared to what they were doing like 5 or 6 years ago. So, we're seeing a lot of these like rising stars in this game that are very young, coming from a lot of separate different organizations. The Orioles have done that. The Pirates have a lot of young talent. We don't know where it goes anywhere, but these are like generational type of talents, like Paul Skeens, who we're going to face tomorrow. That's a generational arm right there. O'Neal Cruz, that's a different story. He struggled at the major league level. He's had a lot of inconsistencies, but he has the potential to be a star. So there's a lot of these young guys. I mean, what the Orioles have done with tons of their draft picks, I mean, it's been incredible. Even you're seeing the Royals get, good with a lot of their young pieces like Bobby Witt, or, like you're seeing, but I'm just saying, like they're seeing a lot of franchise cornerstones come out of a lot of different organizations that are homegrown. And I think that that's kind of weighed off the Scott Boras market a little bit, of guys who, maybe they're approaching their 30s and they're about to get paid. But I got a cheaper version of this guy, or I got a cheaper piece of talent that can transcend this team without even paying that much money. Obviously, I would have to wait, of course, for them to develop. Maybe they pan out, but there's some teams that have taken that route. They have a team that tanking route of getting these draft picks, these young players, and they've looked to more upside than what the player has done. And I'm kind of looking at upside as well more now, especially with Pete Alonso, because we know what he's done. Again, like I said, no one's hit more homers than Pete Alonso in the majors since he's made his debut an opening day in 2019. You got to show me, dude. You got it. Like, the pace that he's on right now is like, yeah, it might be a 40 home run pace as of right now, but he's barely scraping by there. He's not driving in as much. When you're getting out produced, just like in the RBI sense, if you want to talk about that, by somebody who was in the leadoff spot for a majority of the season in Brandon Nimmo, that's an issue. That is an issue. I mean, I'm not one to like completely Bible RBIs as like the main stat that I need for a guy to be good. Of course not. But this is kind of like something that is just like expected of Pete Alonso. He needs to be driving in these runs, and we're not seeing it. We're just not seeing what we need to be seeing from a guy in this contract year.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it from everybody else, where he's kind of just become the overshadowed piece to this lineup.
I think M. Easy said it best. Pete numbers are not bad, but they seem very hollow. That's what it feels like to me.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not like it's just like empty stats of stat padding, because I've never really, I've never been one to like say, oh, this guy's stat padding. It doesn't, because like, again, there's obviously the whole theory of like run differential that obviously matters towards the end of the season, of like tiebreakers and stuff like that, but also with a lot of players of kind of displaying those tools of what the ability that they have, no matter how good it is in either situation or whatever. But with Pete Alonso, I mean, we know what he's capable of, and for some reason, it's just we're not seeing it. And the fact that we're kind of seeing, to be honest, I'm more excited to see Vientos and Alvarez now as compared to Pete, because like I know what Pete can do. Maybe he picks it up, but he just hasn't. He really just hasn't, and hopefully he has a better second half. I hope he does, because that's going to be a big reason as to why if we go to the playoffs or not. But, it's a deep lineup, obviously, which is a good positive. Obviously, guys like Marte have really stepped up. Hopefully we can get him back healthy, him offensively, not defensively. Different story. Harrison Bader has come up huge for us in a lot of these high leverage situations. The man's just a full-on gamer. We've mentioned Tyrone Taylor. Obviously, he's gotten a few hits, but M. Easy was talking about that. He says that, I admit that you guys were right about Taylor. We were talking about him last episode. I was defending him to you guys the other day. I actually forget this conversation, so I'm sorry, M. Easy. I apologize. He's 6 for his last 42. Fourth outfielder. That's what he is. He's a fourth outfielder that's playing a starting guy's job, He's not bad, but it's like he's a margins player playing a position that is being taken over by an injured player who has a lot of injury concerns. So the fact that he's more into the limelight right now, and you're seeing a little bit more of you're seeing Ben Gamble too. That's kind of how you're seeing it from a platoon of, it's a platoon player. It's not an everyday player. He's a fourth outfielder. That's
it's also the fact that DJ Stewart has given us absolutely
DJ
nothing.
Useless. Yeah.
Otherwise, he'd probably be playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because DJ Stewart, we've seen the hot streaks from him, but he can be very flawed in the way as to where, maybe he is a Schwarber at his best, but there's way too much swing and miss for him to be Schwarber with pitches in the strike zone, and that gets frustrating at one point. Now, talking about the studs of this team, of who's been good, who's been bad, I do obviously want to talk about a topic that is going to be coming up this week. I'm not sure what exact day it is. We have, how many games do we have until All-Star break? I'm not sure. Is it like
they got
12,
4 against
11?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They have 3 against Washington.
The Nats,
and
and then the Rockies.
3 against Colorado, I think.
Okay, so about like 2 weeks away from the All-Star break. Now, I want to talk about, obviously, with the Mets being the seesaw of a team that they've been this year, most likely you're only going to get one All-Star representative. And I think that this is a good this is a good discussion, obviously, because there are some pieces that have been good, that have contributed. Sometimes it's a smaller sample than you'd like. Some guys are kind of in the fringe here. So I do want to look at some possible All-Star candidates, obviously, because we're going into the second half of the season. We've already passed that halfway mark, close to the All-Star break. So I want to talk about 4 possible All-Star candidates for the Mets representative. Now, I want to pop these 4 up as we look at it. These are the 4 guys that I would personally go with that it's between. You have Francisco Lindor, 4-time All-Star, of course. He's really picked it up in the leadoff spot, of course. We've seen a lot of the tools, of course. 15 stolen bases. He's kind of on that trend a little bit of the 30-30 again, but he had a little bit of the slow start. But he's been red hot from the leadoff spot, of course. Perennial 4 to 5 win player. And then JD Martinez, who came here a little bit late, so it's not possible, but he's been selected 6 times. Great season, of course. The impact that he's just had on this team has been incredible. And the fact that he's at a 1.4 wins above replacement, missing a part of the season as a designated hitter, not even owning a glove, is pretty impressive. Then you can go to someone who has not been selected to the All-Star game yet, that being Brandon Nimmo. And he has started off slow along with a lot of our offensive pieces, but he has been pretty good. Recently, he has been red hot, especially in June, and he's looking to be the same productive Brandon Nimmo that we know and love. The 140 bat, of course, it's kind of fluctuated with how the league is as of right now, but on pace for the 3 to 4 win season that he has been as a Met for a long time when he's healthy. And then, of course, another guy I can throw in here because I'm just going to add one pitcher, even though the pitching has been quite sweating bullets throughout this entire season. Luis Severino, 2 All-Star selections that he's had. He's had a pretty good bounce-back season for the Mets. Obviously nothing flashy, but it could be a possibility going down the line. Sean Manaea is another one you can mention, but it's been a struggle for him recently. So those are the 4 guys that I would mainly go off of. And this is actually a pretty tight poll in the chat that we got going on right now. Who should be the Mets All-Star Game representative? We have 52% saying Francisco Lindor, 32% saying Brandon Nimmo, 12% saying JD Martinez, and then 4% saying other, which, because it's kind of a fringe with Severino because he's been good. He's been solid. He's been serviceable. He's been great. One of our most consistent arms, but not the all-star caliber that you're expecting of like this crazy breakout that Taijuan Walker had of him just having the defense completely bailing him out. But other than that, when you look at the all-star situation, Anthony, I'll go to you on this. Who are you thinking for this possible candidate? Is it one of those 4? Is it someone you want to like put your hat into the ring for them? Because we're getting close to this all-star break, and it's been a very back and forth season for us. So it's hard to determine who would be that representative.
Could you believe that at the end of April, it probably would have been Reed Garrett?
Yeah.
Possible. Yeah, that's
what
crazy.
A fall from grace that was. But
and he wasn't even on the opening day roster, which is crazy.
No.
Like, yeah.
For a while, I thought it was Sevy because he was pitching so well. I think he had a good streak where he was pitching very well, but I don't think he's all-star worthy right now. I think it's between Lindor and Nimmo, and I think I'm gonna go with Nimmo on this one because he did have a hot streak earlier on in the season, and now he's like back to whereas Lindor got off to a really awful start, like for a good month and a half, and now that they moved him into the leadoff spot, he's playing better. And I think you had on the stat, I think you had 14 home runs, 41 RBIs, but he's got 15.
These are skewered from the other night, so it's around the ballpark. So So some of them are probably off, and obviously they may have gone down. Obviously with this horrid offensive performance we had today.
I think,
yeah.
I want to say Brandon Nimmo, but I also think that Francisco Lindor got screwed last year of not being an all-star. It's going to be between them two. So I don't know. I'm not really big on the all-star stuff, but
yeah,
I can't choose one. I think I would be okay with either Lindor or Nimmo going in there. I just don't think that JD Martinez has done enough to get that right now.
It's all really sample with JD Martinez because he's been off for a few. Like he wasn't here.
He missed a month
directly. Yeah, he did miss was it like 3 or 4 weeks? It was something like that. Like it took a while for him to get going. Andrew, you going with your boy here, or you think this is the year that it finally happens?
Yeah, and if we're looking again, taking this statistically instead of just being fan bias, Brandon Nimmo's got the best shot of anybody because you compare him to all National League outfielders. Christian Yelich got in; he didn't qualify he doesn't have the ABs for outfielder by OPS, but he's third. He's behind the 2 other All-Star starters: Jurickson Profar, Fernando Tatis. Also, that will go into Lindor's case where he is 6th compared to National League's shortstop via OPS. Which will also screw him over is the everybody needs a player bullshit. And you look at the Washington Nationals, C.J. Abrams has been their best player. He most likely will be their all-star. The Cincinnati Reds are god-awful. Ellie De La Cruz will most likely be their all-star. Colorado Rockies, Ezequiel Tovar will most likely be their all-star. So, yes, they could take middle infielders. It doesn't matter. And hell, even Mason Wynn for the Cardinals could probably, even Ryan Helsley probably will be their guaranteed representative. Yeah. Mason Wynn, you can have the argument, could be the Cardinals representative. So again, if we're just taking this statistically, Brandon Nimmo is the Mets all-star. Again, he's top 3 in outfielders in all of the National League. Again, just taking OPS. Again, there's a billion other stats if you want to bring WAR and all that crap into it. I'm just taking OPS as the base metric. And again, taking the fan or everybody needs a participation trophy of getting their guy there. Also doesn't help the fact for Francisco Lindor and the fact the Mets are not a good team. Like you guys said, like Carson said, there's not going to be multiple guys. So again, for me, it looks statistically, it's probably going to be Brandon Nimmo, and everyone's going to yell about Francisco Lindor again getting snubbed because of this MOB being everyone needs a participation trophy.
Yeah, I mean, this is also a good point right here from Explosive Diarrhea. I love this guy's name. I just love it. Grimace is our only all-star, no one else. That's a good point as well. It could happen. Could there be could people be as crazy as they are? Because I know Mets fans, they always love the joke. Could they make a Grimace, like a custom Grimace all-star jersey? It probably will happen, most likely.
Oh yeah.
But
it'll probably look better than those ugly jerseys they have right now for the All-Star game.
I really what happened to just wearing your own jersey? That's just like
what's funny though, that the All-Star jerseys for the American League look I don't know, they look blue and orange to me, and the Yankees All-Star hat is blue and orange. Like
that's a little I mean, I hate the American League jersey.
I don't know. I mean, obviously you want the team, the league wants money, they want to sell more merchandise. I get it, but you're representing your team. You should be wearing your team's jersey. I don't know. When did they stop doing that? That's so weird. Like, it was just so weird.
COVID. Once 2020, I think every year's been the...
Because I think 2019, they had...
The Rockies, the Colorado was the first one, where they had those god-awful pajama-looking jerseys.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I don't like it. I think they should just represent the team that they're representing. But representing the Mets... I think this is the year you give it to Nimmo. I really do, because obviously it's not really just the argument of left field, where Jurickson Profar probably has been like the only guy better than him, and he's starting in the All-Star game. Obviously, we always see there's that one starter who had a great first half that gets slid into the starting lineup as compared to like all these stars of the game. They're going to sustain throughout their careers. Then you have Jurickson Profar, who's like Jurickson Profar, a very streaky player who was terrible last year, one of the worst players in the game, and now he's one of the best. So I think that Nimmo is the next guy in line in left field. But also, I mean, I will continue to go by the notion of like the last few years that Brandon Nimmo is the best player in baseball to never be selected to an All-Star game. And I continue to put out that truth. I don't see anybody else in comparison. And maybe that's just like a little bit of a tough, I think it's Brandon Nimmo. Maybe there's not much competition for that of like he's been in the league for a while. He's in his 30s. There has always been guys who have had like good seasons. They get the All-Star nod or whatever. They represent their team. It's never been Brandon Nimmo, because Brandon Nimmo, behind Alonso, behind whether it's Lindor, even though Lindor's never been one as a Met. We've seen Jeff McNeil get the All-Star nod. We've seen, you've had it behind DeGrom sometimes. You've had it behind even Taijuan Walker got one over a guy like Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo has just been a consistent player for a long time and one of the best at his position. Nobody really talks about him because the outfield is so loaded in this entire league. But I do believe that he is even Marte got one as a Met. Our co-host checking in here, Frank adding, he got one as a Met. And Starling Marte is a good player, but when you look at it from Nimmo, I think it's time. It's time to give him the nod already. I think that he's been the Mr. Consistent. He's been the guy up for the task. And, if you want to talk about coming up clutch, he's done that for us this week. Let's just say that. It's been pretty impressive.
Yeah. He comes up clutch after concussing himself. I don't know how that happened, but he did concuss himself and came up with 2 big hits. Let's not forget the game where he tweaked his back and then came back the next day and won the game with a walk-off. The guy's been amazing.
Man took a bump, cut his head, and then, you know what? I'm going to have 2 RBI clutch hits after the fact. There you go. Brandon Nimmo for you.
Yeah. It's just it's been unreal. I think that he finally does deserve that recognition eventually, because he's been one of the most underrated players in the league. And that's not me looking at it from the orange and blue goggles, because I'm always one to criticize our own players or another player from another team the same way. But he's just gotten better every single year. He's going to be here for a long time, and at some point, you got to have the year where he gets the recognition. I think this is the perfect spot where he does. I don't know if you toss anybody else into the ring. You could make a case, for JD Martinez because of the impact he's had. It's been, small. He has, what is it like? I don't know, a little bit less than 100 plate appearance, less than Lindor or Nimmo. So it's not like that small of a sample, but he did miss a month. It did happen. Also, Lindor, of course, having that slow start. Andrew also talking about the competition in the National League of guys who are going to be like the lone representatives, such as our team. I think it's Nimmo who is the best representative there. And there's also an argument for. Is there an argument for Alonso? I don't know.
No.
He hasn't been good, but I'm just saying, is there any other first baseman that would overtake him?
Bryce Harper, Christian Walker, Freddie Freeman. There's already 3. Give me some more time, I could probably get you to
Isn't Freddie Freeman out?
Is Freddie here?
Isn't Freddie Freeman hurt?
I know Mookie's. I don't know about Freddie.
But yeah, Bryce Harper, but he's starting, right? So who would come in reserve?
And Christian Walker's having a better year than Alonso.
Okay. So again, I think that it's down to Lindor and Nimmo, but I think given the positional flexibility that you
Freddie's
have.
Fine. Came back.
Freddie's fine. Then who got hurt? Mookie got hurt. Mookie got hurt. Never mind. Okay. But with Nimmo, I think it's time. He's just been that Mr. Consistent for a long time. And it's the best way to represent it, because I don't think there's really anybody in this fan base that has a polarizing opinion about Nimmo. They're really, I feel like it's just the best way to represent this team. It's just Nimmo. Everybody likes Nimmo. Who doesn't like Nimmo? He's so good. He's a likable guy. Okay, shut up. But
what
I'm saying is that I've never seen a fan base rally around any player here or show any criticism to a guy the least as much to Brandon Nimmo. It's well deserved. I think it is well deserved because he's been that consistent player for us for a long time. And I'm I've been impressed with how much better he gets every single year. And I'm glad to have him here for years and years to come. Let's just say that. This is another point. Vientos and Alvarez possibly, because like the catching position is a little spotty, of course. I'm not sure, because in the American League it's pretty much set. It's Salvi and Adley, right?
Mm-hmm.
JT hasn't been that good, right? Or he hasn't been.
Contreras and Will Smith. Yeah, Contreras and Will Smith.
Contreras and Will Smith. So there's an argument there. Third base is not as hefty as it used to be.
Alec Bohm is starting, so I mean, yeah.
Alec Bohm is starting. Nolan hasn't been great.
Nolan's been ass. Manny's been ass.
Yeah, Manny's not been good. Rendon's not even in the National League anymore.
That's a
Brian Hayes maybe. Like it's kind of like it's pretty low. So you could maybe plug Vientos in if you have a lot of injuries that go off, but we'll see what happens. But I think the best chance here is Nimmo. If you're talking about one representative, it's Nimmo, and I think it's well-deserved for the years and years of consistency he's shown in a Mets uniform, which, especially in front of a fan base, that will bite your head off if you don't perform. But as for the injury report, I'm going to go into that, and we will then we'll get into studs and duds, and then we'll get out of here. Kodai Senga completed his first rehab assignment last night, which was Wednesday, and he went 2 2/3 scoreless, no hits, no earned runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts, and 35 pitches. He was taken out early, and his next rehab outing is expected to be in AAA, most likely on Tuesday, and it will be a 50-pitch outing, so he continues to ramp up, and after the All-Star break, we're kind of on that pace for Kodai Senga to return to rotation, which will definitely be a huge boost for the team. Harrison Bader, obviously, is currently day-to-day with the usual soreness that he's experienced after colliding into the outfield wall in the 3rd inning on Tuesday's game. He did not play Wednesday night. He also did not play today, which is Thursday, and all of it is precautionary. They underwent tests. He does not have a concussion. He's fine. He should be back in the lineup eventually, but he is day-to-day, so the Mets are playing with a shortened outfield for the next few days, which is why DJ Stewart has continued to get starts in this lineup. And as for Brandon Nimmo, which was just hinted by Anthony just a few minutes ago, he was scratched from Monday's lineup after hitting his head and sustaining a cut on his forehead, and during the middle of the night, he did cramp up. He fainted while he was waking up at 5 a.m. Crazy story if you want to look at the full-on article that I'm sure SNY or the New York Post has. He underwent tests. He underwent tests and imaging, and he was back in the lineup off the bench on Tuesday and returned to the Mets lineup on Wednesday night. So in between those days that he got those clutch hits, he had a near concussion, fainted. I mean, the man just got ice in his veins. What can I say? It's Brandon Nimmo. I don't know what to say. It's just been incredible. And again, hopefully we get Senga back. Harrison Bader's been a good contributor to this lineup, so hopefully we can get him back as well going down the stretch to the All-Star break. So let's go to studs and duds, and then we'll obviously get out of here. 4-game set, a lot of games to assess, let's just say that. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who do you got for your stud of this series?
So I'll go. I won't say Brandon Nimmo because that's, we've already slurped him off enough. So I'm going to go with a surprising one. And it's between the two of the lefties. We got 7 innings out of 2 lefties that we barely get 5 out of. I'll give it to Sean Manaea because, again, we made a whole segment about him a couple episodes ago about saying, can you get some length out of this guy? It gives you 7 quality innings out of the start. Where you needed some length out of your rotation. He gives you 7 when he's been barely 5 in the fly. Pitch count was good, got through 7. So I'll give Sean Manaea a little bit of flowers.
All right, Anthony, what do you got as your stud for this series? Who you picking?
I'm gonna go with I'll go with the other lefty. I'm gonna go with Jose Quintana because a lot of people have been expecting him to fall off. I saw a lot of complaints on Twitter yesterday with the fact that Francisco Alvarez didn't play to help out Christian Scott. And you got to go. The veteran's going to get the call over the rookie on who's going to catch for him. And he wanted Francisco Alvarez to catch for him, Jose Quintana. And look at what he did. 7 innings pitched today, shutout ball. probably one of his best starts, this season and probably as a Met. It sucks that they didn't get the win, but he did his job. And that's what matters to me, is that he continues to, I don't want to say up his value, because I don't know how much you're going to get for him in a trade, but you want to see Jose Quintana pitch well, because if they can trade him, they probably should.
Yeah, especially with the buy and sell mentality of that. Quintana is going to be a pivotal piece to that. And this is a good point from our co-host. He just keeps going. Frank telling us that Quintana has a 6 ERA without Alvarez, and in the twos with him. That's good. That's good ERA.
Yeah, that's good ERA.
I'm gonna continue the pitching train on the studs part of this, and I'm gonna go with Jose Butto, because this guy came off cold from Syracuse 3 days before he pitched 100. He threw 100 pitches. Ooh. Then he gives you 2 innings in relief. Did not warm up in the way that he obviously is used to as a starter. They put him in the game in these late innings. 2 crucial innings he got for us. I think I don't know if he walked one batter, but he got the job done, and he was able to put us in that position to win that game. And it was pretty impressive to see that from Butto, who is not really a reliever. He's kind of been brought up as a starter. I'm actually hoping they eventually move him to the rotation and move somebody like Manaya to the bullpen, or go with a 6-man rotation before Senga even comes back. I'm hoping that they do something like that, because I want to see the innings that can be provided from Jose Butto, who I think is a really good rubber arm to have in there, as compared to Peterson or McGill at this point, as to what we're looking at it from the current stand. But Jose Butto, very impressive, put us in a position to win. You can't hate that whatsoever, especially on the short rest that he got after throwing 100 pitches in Syracuse. Let's go to duds. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who do you want to throw under the bus here?
I mean, at this point, when you say the same names, I'm trying to be creative here. So I'll say it because we'll probably never get another chance to bury Tyler J. Learn Taiwanese, buddy. I never want to see this man ever again. Again, don't even send him to Syracuse. Do what Jordan Blasnovich just did. Sell his ass to the KBO. I've had enough of this thing. And I get it. You're desperate for him. We need a whole goddamn segment about it. But God, you got a 7-run top of the 10th or 6th, whatever it was. Over 6 runs in extra innings. That normally kills a team. Nobody's coming back from that. And of course, he's got to come in and just bleed it up and make us freaking sweat. Again, that should have been put away easy. So Tyler J., go get some Kung Pao chicken, buddy.
Okay. I'm sorry. There's some points where he just throws us off and just puts us into another different.
That was great.
And I'm speechless. Okay. Anthony. Your dud?
Yeah, it's got to be Jake Diekman to me. And I know he won a game earlier on in the series, but I mean, come on, man. This is the second big game you've blown. We desperately needed this game along with that game on, what was it, Saturday that he blew? Come on, man. He's been just awful. You got to be able to get out lefties, and he just is not able to do that. He just soft tosses, he nibbles, and he just doesn't throw any strikes. I think he walks like a batter every time he comes in. He's been awful.
That might be actually true. That might actually be a fact. I actually want to see if that's true. But yeah, he just doesn't know where the ball's going. I mean, he just doesn't.
I know Tyler J. That was absolutely unacceptable to give up the, what was it? Yeah. What was it, a 7-run lead that they had, and then he get in extras and he gives that up, and then we have to go to somebody else. But I mean, we're talking about a veteran. This guy's supposed to lead. Will be a part of the leadership in that bullpen, and he's been awful. And I don't know. He's just a dud for me, because that was a game that we had, and it got blown away from him.
Yeah, he has walked a batter in 6 of his last 8 appearances.
Good grief!
So that's not good. That isn't good. I am going to go to DJ Stewart, because I think it's time to pull the plug here. It's been fun. We call him ShopRite Schwarber. Great. He's not Schwarber. right? I mean, he's good in pinches. He's a part-time player. Now we're kind of seeing him more into the light with Marte going down. You have Ben Gamble there as well. Like, at some point, you got to pull up like a utility man, whether it's Mike Brasso, whether it's one of the young guys in AAA, whether it's even Luke Ritter, to be honest. DJ Stewart right now, it's running its course. He's got a minor league option, as I've mentioned on Twitter many times. Like, it's losing its gas here. He shouldn't be having the gateway to bat fifth as well. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I'm done with it. I think at this point, you got to stash it away, send him to AAA. I understand he's making more money than the usual, like minor leaguer, but cut your losses here, make the roster a little bit more versatile until you get somebody like Marte back.
They are holding on to him like they did to what's his name last year, Vogelback. They are just like not letting go. Good for him to like be able to make 2 weeks. He 2 good weeks. He got a 1-year contract out of. Good for him. Bad for the Mets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that I don't know how much he's getting paid. It's like $1.6 million. It's not much, but it's impressive for somebody who's just like basically a hitter, doesn't really provide anything else. But it's just at some point, cut the cord here. It's not working out. I mean, they just got to make this roster a little bit more flexible, and that starts with DJ Stewart, who can be an extra bat off the bench, but it's just not working out here. The magic is running out with DJ Stewart, and every single time when we do criticize him, he usually just like goes off somehow. But right now, it's pretty noticeable, especially if they're batting in fifth in this lineup, which he does not belong in, especially with guys like Martinez contributing the way that he has, and Vientos and even Alvarez. Like, so many other guys can be in that 5 spot behind Alonso. There's no reason for DJ Stewart, even if you're looking at the righty-lefty matchups. There's no reason for it whatsoever. Cut the losses now. I think that it's run dry. Let's just say that. It was a fun experience, but let's leave it at that. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. We'll get to the parting words. Thank you to Anthony Rivera for joining us. It was a blast as per usual, and it was good to have you back on here. Anything that you would like to plug, anything that you have going on in the future here, where everybody can find you, all of his links are in the description, as always, for all of our guests. So what do you got for the closing remarks?
I got a live show coming up tomorrow at 3:30. Jingle Man's going to join me on be a guest co-host for Subway Shea Podcasts on YouTube. Obviously, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, and then the usual X, Instagram, TikTok at Subway to Shea. I will say this about this is a trap series to me coming up. The Mets never play well, especially over the last couple of years in Pittsburgh. You got the two of their better pitchers going up. Luckily, we missed one because he's on the IL. But I wouldn't be surprised. I would give me a split right now with this series, and I would be okay.
Yeah, I Pittsburgh. There's always been a lot of weird stuff that has gone on with the Mets there. From that, what is it, that ball that they like Taijuan Walker kicked out of play, or
so
the
much.
Diaz homer. I mean, there's just been so many weird stuff that's gone on in Pittsburgh of a team that you expect to be competitive against, but for some reason in Pittsburgh, they just can't consistently win there. Andrew, I'll go to you. Here's your chance to yap one more time.
Yeah, again, the Mets have been better against elite pitching. Enjoy Paul Skeens. We'll see how that, again, Skeens and Mitch Keller keep the offense going, and hopefully we don't have multiple just bullpen complosions. That'd be nice. If you just do 1 or 0, I mean, obviously you'd like 0, but don't be blowing up whole series. Just keep it to 1 at bare minimum.
All right, well, the last thing I got to say is we're counting down the days until Edwin Diaz comes back, because that is really going to help out the bullpen. I missed Edwin Diaz more than anybody in the world, obviously. And I obviously don't believe that he cheated, and I believe that he's a perfect angel and he's done absolutely nothing wrong. But when I look at it, it's just you got to keep pushing. I mean, some of these have been disheartening losses, but they got to find a way to bounce back if they're going to stay in this race, because you can see on the screen right here, we're 3 games out of this wild card. We're starting to gain a little bit of separation here, as opposed to like a week or 2 ago where it was pretty tight. I mean, you had about, it was like 8 teams within like 2 games of each other. So it's starting to even out a little bit and look a little bit more like a wild card race as the days go by. So the Mets have to start winning games, and they have to start winning games fast. They have to play better baseball than they did today and the day before. And, hopefully they can continue the consistency up, and, maybe we'll be above 500 after this series. That would be nice. It'd be awesome. Happy 4th of July to everybody that tuned in for us live, for those of you who are listening on audio, for those of you who are watching on playback, for those of you who came in here for a few minutes. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on post notifications for this very podcast, which is regularly recorded on Sundays and Thursdays following every series of games, with the audio versions, of course, dropping 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. Follow everyone individually. All the links are in the description. Thank you again to Subway to Shea, Anthony Rivera for joining us for this episode. For everybody here watching live or on playback, let's go Mets, and we'll see you guys next time.